Hey there YouTube, this is Air of Carthage here. Going to bring you a Shogun 2 online commentary, and my commentary today is going to be here for educational value. Many of you have been involved in the long-standing debate over matchlocks and lone swords on Shogun 2, and we all know that there is a patch coming soon. We don't know exactly how that patch is going to address those units, but we've been told that they are going to be addressed. So I can't tell you what to expect after the patch, but I can explain to you what's going on right now. So, first of all, I feel like dirty for even having brought the army that I brought here. I'm going to put it in slow motion and show it to you. I have two bow warrior monks. Now, you have to remember that Air is definitely not used to spam armies, and so I'm not actually the best prepared to do it. So you have to remember that some spam armies out there are still tougher yet than what I have here, but my army is extremely potent. I've got two bow warrior monks. One of them, which would be my Shinto Apache bows, is a 200 range. I don't even have 200 range, bow warrior monks to give you an idea of how far behind the times I am. I have 6 non-veteran Yari-Ashigaru, and then as far as my swords go, I have 5 lone sword veterans, all with high chevrons. And they have pretty stout attack, and my opponent's using World Weary on me though, so it's going to bring my attack down some, so some of my swords aren't like fantastic right now. And then I have my my Waco Raiders right here. So my opponent played World Weary against me, so that's it. What that retainer does, if you're not familiar with, is it takes your veteran stats down by quite a bit. And then I have 3 matchlock units. I have a veteran matchlock Ashigaru. I rarely use these guys, so that's why you rarely see them. And even my good veteran matchlock Ashigaru, only 5 chevron. And so, I mean, again, I see people all the time with 9 chevron ones who have range upgrades and fire by rank, all that stuff. And then I have my heavy gunners here. Now, these guys do have some slick upgrades. I've upgraded their reload skill and also their accuracy, and then these guys have rapid volley also. So these guys will fire with insane burst of speed whenever rapid volley's on. Now, the reason I did this is because whenever they first came out, I mean, this unit was just so hilarious to me. I couldn't believe they released a unit that I could mow down an entire enemy army with. And some people be like, man, you've used those guys a lot to get 7 chevrons. For anybody who's used heavy gunners, you know that I've only used these guys in about 4 or 5 battles, and you can easily have 7 chevrons. And I'll prove that to you in this match. So my opponent also brought a pretty big... Now, I mean, and... Let me pause it for just a second and make a preface to all this here. My opponent was very polite, and I was trying to be polite to him. Now, I did not tell him before the battle that I was going to bring a spam army, and it just so happened that he brought a spam army also. Now, when I say that, am I insulting my opponents when I say spam army? No. I'm just insulting the train of thought that came up with this army, and it's not this guy's fault right here. Whoever I'm playing, MCS Berserk, it's not his fault. He didn't come up with this train of thought, and he's just playing the game that he apparently, the way he wants to play the game, so I don't have any problem with that. Now, when these type of armies beat me, does it make me mad? It sure as heck does, because I don't like the fact that Shogun 2 is made in such a way that a spam of peasants can beat a spam of samurai who are like world-renowned for their, ways of battle and everything like that back in these days, or in history, I should say. So here he's got quite the spam of lone swords. So again, when I say that, please understand what I'm saying. He's got a couple of Naginata monk cav. He has opted to go with no archers and go on the rush variant, but he does have 2 units of these matchlock warrior monks, and they have increased range. Plus, he can turn on their temporary ability and increase the range all the way to 150. So he's got some very potent matchlocks. He's got a couple of good spears holding up his flanks. The rest of his spears are unveteran. Let's take a look at his units. He's got, let's see, 3, how many lone swords he's got up here? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's got 8 lone swords, which is pretty big. I think I have 7 sword units. One of mine is non-veteran, and one's the Waco Raider. So he's brought cav in place of a couple of extra sword units, but these are monk cav, so these guys have Warcry. So that's why he's brought them. So you can see my 200 range bow monks went ahead and started opening up. Now from this range, they will cause some pretty decent damage, but they're not going to be absolutely insane. But I mean, do not ever underestimate 200 range bow warrior monks. If these guys go unopposed, they will get so many kills that it's frightening over the course of a battle. So if you are facing 200 range bow monks, you cannot ignore those guys. They will kill the living crap out of your men. But if you think they make a lot of kills, just keep your eyes open. So I'm showing you a typical type strategy you're going to run into when you're playing a lone sword spammer. And and again, I'm not trying to be mean to people, but what I hate is the fact that since there's a leaderboard, people come up with these tactics because they know it's going to beat 90% of the people out there without having to think. So you're going to watch my strategies in this game. My army is going to be very defensive, very very stationary. I'm going to move an absolute minimum amount of times. So I brought my matchlocks up, and now normally you would be fighting with enemy 200 range bow monks at this point. You know, basically we would end up shooting each other out, and so then it would come down to the matchlock fight. So this is actually a spam versus spam army. I was kind of hoping for a spam versus non-spam army, but even still, you're going to get my point from this video, because my opponent's army, like I said here, is extremely potent, and most of the normal armies I bring would have a very hard time beating an army like this, just because I usually don't bring matchlocks, and without matchlocks it would be hard for me to cut down enough of these lone swords fast enough to win. Plus he would have his matchlock warrior monks firing. So here I'm unleashing bow volleys onto his Yari Ashigaru, just trying to goad him into an attack. If I can pull him forward, like I said, my matchlocks will just make mincemeat of him. I won't have to do anything. I can just stand there, move my spears forward, to keep him from touching my matchlocks, and due to the magic bullet effect that we see on Shogun 2, where you can shoot through the backs of your own men, my guys will just shoot right through the back of my own men and kill more of his than mine. Now there is a little bit of an indentation in the land here, but it's not enough that it's going to really help my opponent. So let's watch the charge here. Let's watch in slow motion. Now I know sometimes y'all get mad at slow motion, but I'm telling you, if we watch this in regular speed, you'd be absolutely mind-boggled how fast that this can happen. So keep an eye here. These matchlock Ashigaru, go ahead and open fire here. They don't get a real outstanding number of kills. These are just matchlock Ashigaru. But look what I'm doing in the center. On this this unit right here, I inspired my heavy gunners, put it on rapid volley, and then went into stand and fight. So check out the statistics on this unit. 100 range, 112 reload skill, and 82 accuracy. Watch this unit. They're being approached by 2 lone swords. Watch their kills here. So they open up, nothing real impressive because the terrain, they got 26 kills, but watch the reload time. They're already firing again. So unless you had like a whole brace of guns laying on the ground that were already loaded, watch. They fire, they take their gun down, and then they put it right back up and fire. There is no reload. And look, they trashed an entire unit of lone swords before they can even get up and over. And now there's a rise here, so these guys aren't even being shot from full range. They're being shot at, you know, from a minimized range, but they're still never going to get anywhere near me. Look, these guys already have 200 kills, basically. 200 kills, and this is in slow motion, and it was quick. So this is just to give you an idea. So my opponent has absolutely no chance of victory in the center. He's going to get mowed down. My heavy gunners can fire faster than he can bring men forward. Meat shielding won't work. And as long as they have a unit like I do, these spears here in front to distract, you have no chance. Look, that unit of horses already down to past half. And so the only place where my opponent is making any headway is over here on this flank, where all I have is matchlock Ashigaru. Now these guys are potent, but they're not near as strong. So my opponent pops a war cry off here, but remember, I'm in stand and fight, and I'm using Way of the Iko-Iki. So even his war cry hasn't even taken my men's morale down into the orange. And I have nothing but Ashigaru units. So again, herein lies the problem with Ashigaru armies. I'm going to go ahead and put it into play. And so look, my army is completely stationary. I'm only just now charging a sword unit forward, and I'm only just now suffering a routing unit. And you can just see the amount of damage that I caused. Look, he never even touched me in the center. My heavy gunners just absolutely thrash anything he sends forward. My 200 range bow monks, or my 200 range bow monk, and then the other one will make short work of his matchlock units. As soon as I open fire on them, they'll be gone in no time. You can see this unit just drop down 20 men almost instantly, and it's going to just keep going down. In stand and fight, my bow monks will just launch one salvo after another. So look how quick this matchlock unit is just devastated. He continues to try and charge in this flank, but he has no chance of even getting to my infantry. These heavy gunners will just destroy him. I mean, there's absolutely no way. And the only way you can take an army like this is by flanking maneuvers, but the problem is that, remember, they have a lot of lone swords, and you've seen me beat armies kind of like this. But I'm telling you, whenever you throw the heavy gunners plus 2 matchlock Ashigaru, these armies get insanely powerful. Look, he finally did get me in melee, but I have just as many lone swords as he does because I ripped up half of his, and you can see how quickly his morale is going to fade. My matchlocks, again, are going to continue to fire into his men. And despite his valiant efforts to come in here and warcry my men, again, look at the morale of my men, almost completely unshaken. And then he even activated Hold Firm here. And it's not going to do any good for him. I'm just going to keep mowing down his men, because Hold Firm isn't going to save him from matchlock fire. So you can see how powerful these spam armies are, and I hope you all understand why I don't like these armies. And at this point, this is either where I got drop hacked or drop connection from Steam. Now again, I'm not accusing my opponent of having drop hacked me. In fact, I wouldn't even have to blame him for having to face this, but it is something that happens because a lot of people, that's how they get their rank on the leaderboard. Now once again, let me make very clear, I'm not accusing my opponent of this. I'm just saying what I see in other matches. My opponent was very polite, and I have no reason to believe that he was involved in anything like that. Now, and again, I don't like his army selection. I don't like my army selection. You'll never see me use that again. But I'm just trying to show you how powerful this is. I mean, just look at the absolute carnage. Absolutely easy victory for me. All I had to do was blob my swords onto his to stop him in the end. And I think it's kind of funny how this is glitched out here at the end. So this is what happened to me. I'm sitting here hoping the game will restart, but it never did. I mean, just look at my heavy gunners. One loss, and they got, it doesn't show their kills, but they got 406 kills. You'll see it on the other screen. At this point, I'm just, mopping up the remainder of my opponent's units. Absolutely insane how powerful this army was. Even I was blown away by it, even though I've played it a number of times. I just absolutely wrecked his army. And I had 2,400 men on the field, so even if he killed a whole bunch of my men, doesn't matter. I got 2,400 of them. I mean, I can throw away 1,200 men and still have 1,200 men sitting on the field. Like I said, stay tuned for the results screen. This video is for educational purposes only. This demonstrates why I hate these types of armies, because you all saw here I had to use a very minimal strategy. As long as I spread out and take up a big space, even if my opponent tries to flank me, it's going to split up his army so badly that I can hit one side with enough matchlock fire to just completely rout it. And even if he does manage to kill 1,000 men on my other flank, I've got over 1,000 more men left on the other flank. And so that's why these armies are so difficult to take down, and that's why I don't like them. Hopefully the patch addresses these types of armies, because personally I think it creates really a historical gameplay. Now, I don't expect a Total War game to be like perfectly historical, and I don't want that either. I kind of like, to some extent, the bit of an arcade feel that Total War games will have. But I also would like the general idea of the Sengoku period to be kept, which is that the samurai were the dominant force in the military, not a bunch of peasants. So if we all wanted to play Japanese Peasant Total War, that's probably what they should have named the game. But the game that I bought was called Shogun 2 Total War, and the whole fight for the Shogun was between all the different samurai factions and stuff. So that's my thoughts on that. You don't have to listen to what I say. It's my opinion. I'm not going to boycott the game or anything like that, and if people want to, that's fine too, that's their choice. I'm just telling you what I think, and I wanted to show you how powerful this army is. So if you encounter one online, you make sure and give it plenty of distance right here. They racked up 305 kills during the course of that battle. So just to give you an idea how strong these guys are. And that was my, I don't remember which one of those was my 200 range unit, to be honest. But I mean, you can see how many kills those missile units can rack up. And look, this is a matchlock Ashigaru. So this would be poorly trained men who were given a matchlock, and both of them racked up almost 200, or the better part of 200 kills. So if you look at it, my army, my lone swords didn't even have to do anything. So my matchlocks and bows just absolutely won that battle. Now, my opponent did assault me straight from the front. And, there's pretty much no way that he could have won in that type of fight. But it goes to show you, I mean, he had an extremely potent army when it comes to melee power. But he never got a chance to really get into melee with me because his army was completely destroyed by my missile units. So that's why I don't like these spams. Am I going to tell you not to use them? No. If you play against me, will it make me mad if you use that kind of army? Yeah, probably. Will I get on to you and call you names and everything else? No, certainly not. Because you paid for the game, and you certainly have the right to play it however you want. Now, am I going to say that I'm not wishing CA would address this stuff? I certainly wish they would address it, just because personally I think I would find the game more enjoyable if there was more diversity in the types of armies that people bring. Now, there are some people online who do that, myself included. I try and bring some different types of armies from time to time. I think it keeps things fresh. So I do look forward to the DLC because, there won't be any matchlocks there. I'm also curious to see what they do in the patch. I hope they don't accidentally make things worse, because the game is playable the way it is. It's just certainly annoying. sometimes, and I guess that's all a matter of preference too, but I think that there's a lot of people who would agree with me. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. This is just an informative thing. I'm not on here to trash anybody or run anybody down or tell them how they have to play the game. I just wanted to show you how strong these armies are. I was absolutely shattered yesterday against an army like this, and despite my best efforts, you just get picked clean by some of these armies, so if the other person doesn't make a mistake, you are going to die against that type of army. Anyway, like I said, this is just for educational value. Hope that you newer players or players who don't understand these armies have learned something from it and know how to be cautious about them.